Hello.
Hello everybody and welcome to Heelanhammer. On today's show we chat everything Skaven. We talk scratch building, games, hobby, all this and more on today's You love that intro, don't you, Wayne? You love it. You love it. Hello everybody and welcome to Heelanhammer. It is episode 88 and we are sponsored by Og Games. So Wayne, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. A little bit tired. I don't know why.
We're always tired.
But yeah,
we always do this in the night.
By the time we put the world to rights before we come on the podcast, it does get on a bit. So
we should actually record a show with our rage.
No.
I'm sure the listeners would love that.
Yeah, I much prefer my on-air fence sitting, as it's become known. So we are sponsored by Og Games, and if it's still just about June by the time this show comes out. As of the recording date, I haven't got a July code yet, but I will post one up. So just keep an eye on the website, and I'm sure you will see it there. So we're sponsored by Og Games, and the code you want to use to get the great deal is obviously Og. All lowercase, although ultimately I think it doesn't matter. When you spend £30 or more on anything, you get a hobby kit for just not a lot of money. 50 magnets, modular GW tray set, 3 times A4 Fleximetal sheet, 3 times A4 magnetic sheet, army painter black for just 30 quid on top. So that'll pretty much do quite a few units of magnetising it. And again, if you're unsure of how this works, check out a couple of shows back, or if you're a Saucy member, you'll see a full photoed up guide on the internet. Tutorial, that's the word I was looking for. So there you go, Og Games, check them out. Now, normally at this point we would go into the news, but there hasn't been any. Unfortunately, just timing. Quite often we get White Dwarf just as we're recording this show, but because of the way the Saturdays fall in the month, it hasn't actually arrived yet. So no real news, not a lot of rumours. The rumours on Warseer really is just the fact that the Lizardman book is believed to be coming out in August, which I have no reason to doubt. But
Are you excited?
No. No, I kind of am, because I want to see what they've done with the artwork and the whole imagery of the list. But in terms of gameplay, I'm not.
Where's the real Dan Heelan? What have you done with him?
Well,
you're more interested in the fluff.
No, I just got this horrible feeling they're going to wreck my army.
Oh, right.
And that's really doom and gloom, typical internet rager, isn't it, really? They're going to ruin my army. I don't know, I like it, and I just don't want to turn it into a plastic dinosaur feel.
Does that kind of, in your eyes, show how bad it is?
What's
at the
that?
moment.
Oh, what? Because it's how filthy it is.
Yeah, because how filthy. And you think, well, if they start tampering with it, it's not going to be so filthy, and therefore I won't want to play it. That's bad, Dan. That's not the attitude.
No, you're probably right. I mean, the thing is,
So really, you were never into Lizardmen. It was just that they were a hardcore army and you could smash people up with it.
No.
Say we feel.
This is going to surprise you because it's exactly the opposite. The reason I always like Lizardmen is I love the whole Aztec Lost World theme. I think I've said it on the show before. My 2 favourite themes in life really is nautical sort of pirates, that kind of under the sea, all that kind of stuff. That theme, or Lost World type themes. And for me, the Lizardman sort of epitomised that whole Lost World thing, searching through long lost jungles and long lost civilizations, all this kind of stuff. What worries me is Games Workshop are going to turn it into an army of 13-year-olds, and it's just going to be like, yeah, big dinosaurs and monsters, rah. And that's not really how I like to play Warhammer. I quite like the idea of fleeing skinks for
you want
units.
More shots.
Yeah, exactly, more poison shoots, please, Games
So
Workshop.
if all the big dinosaurs got massive blowpipes on them and sort of like, sort of Gatling gun darts, yeah, you'd be happy then, wouldn't you?
I don't know if I would. I always liked the idea. As you know, I had 2 Stegodons in my 7th edition army, and I don't mind, going back to maybe having one of those. But I'm not keen on the actual model. I mean, it depends. If there's a really exciting model, I'll be there tomorrow, and I'll definitely be pre-ordering.
Well, there's bound to be new stuff, isn't there?
Yeah,
there's bound to be.
I'll definitely be picking it up. But if they've ruined it in terms of how the army plays or how it looks, then for me, I'll probably just skip it.
Imagine if skinks no longer had blowpipes.
Don't
Basically, the trees that they fashioned the blowpipes out have bbeen wiped out.
Yeah,
there's some kind of disease that happened to the forest, and they've changed the whole concept of the army now. It's had to adjust. You'd cry. I would.
And if I don't know, there's many things. It's always a worrying time, isn't it, when you're really into an army? I think, and you just think, what they're going to do to my book. I mean, I'd imagine from a Skaven perspective, you were probably quite happy, weren't you, to see the new book, because the 7th edition book was just Skyra.
I was never. I mean, it was obviously
Sky.
Actually, no, Scry.
Yeah.
I was never that pleased when it first came out. Not obviously this edition, the previous one. Literally within a week of it coming out, I was kind of like, because there's so much more they could have done with it. I mean, there's always more they can do with a book when they bring it out, because someone will always lose out. There'll always be someone that's into a certain kind of army, and they won't get it. But yeah, I thought that when that new book came out, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that obviously most of the armies that I see that are Skaven are in the tournament environment, and they're pretty much cut and paste.
Yes,
and it's a shame.
No,
I know that's what wins. I know that's what wins games, and they're safe builds, but it is a shame because there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, we're going to talk about that very, very shortly. So I suppose that's actually, I like that, Wayne. That was almost pro me showing you.
Was it?
What
it was that good, was it?
Yeah. It was almost pro leap podcasting then, except I ruined it and highlighted it. You'd actually segued us straight into our main topic. So let's get on with it. Let's talk about our main topic today, which is Skaven. Now, a new listener to the show actually contacted me via the Warhammer forum and asked me for some suggestions of shows they could listen to talk about Skaven.
Yeah.
And there's bound to be lots, especially as both being big Skaven fans. We've probably mentioned it a lot over the time. There was the Skaven book review, but I'm conscious that it's not really relates to the current 8th edition, the meta as the term we use of the, how the game's evolved and what you should be taking. So I thought we'll give it a good overview in this show. We're going to talk a bit about builds, general tactics, general principles. We'll also, in the war room, I think we're going to talk from the opposite end of the scale. We're going to look at how you beat them, what scares us as Skaven generals, and also how to get this normally one of the higher model count armies done very quickly. Wayne's got some ideas on how you could knock this out fairly quickly. And then as the show goes through, we've got the usual kind of stuff. There's a lot of us talking about what we got up to. We've got a story of the week about a game that myself and Wayne played. And we've got Wayne is really keen to talk sort of going back to, we had a show us your tips topic a few shows ago, which was talking about plastic stripping and what you can do with it in terrain. And you've been using it a lot in your army, haven't you? So we're going to be talking about that as well.
Scratch build and stuff, yeah.
Indeed. So on to it then, Wayne. Let's talk Skaven. Now, you're always keen to talk Skaven, I know, as a big fan. Should we talk first off, what is it you like about the Skaven? I don't know if we've ever said, we probably have, but, what is it?
That's a really good question, actually. I couldn't put my finger on a single thing. It was, I know the first time I saw him in '86 when the compendium came out, and it was the Jess Goodwin artwork, and there was the Battle from La Mason Tell with the scenario was in there, Terror Lich Master, all that kind of stuff, and they had the brand new metal models, and I was just kind of blown away by it all because as a release, there was so much content in. I mean, I've still got that journal, the Citadel journal. There was so much content in it that reading the background for the first time, and then the scenario, and then the new models and how to paint the new models, and kind of like it was really good back then. Like nowadays, when you get like a White Dwarf release and you get a new army, it's like there isn't actually that much content. I know we've touched on this a few times, but back then you always got a lot of content, and I remember buying that journal for the first time, reading it, and I was just hooked. I just liked everything about them. I think what got me the most was the artwork. Jess Goodwin's artwork was just spot on. It just and there was also a comic strip in there that was Caleb Dark. I don't know if anyone, probably a lot of the older listeners remember Caleb Dark, but it was a series of comic strips about this Chaos Warrior who was possessed by a demon of Zench, but he was kind of anti-chaos. So he would actually, even though he was a Chaos Warrior, he would battle against Chaos. And he had this axe that was as like a living axe. I can't remember what it's called now. We had this axe was like a living axe, looked like a pterodactyl's head. And when he fought with it, it would come alive and actually bite into people and stuff.
Oh yeah, cool.
It was really cool. But they incorporated the edition of Caleb Dark that was in the journal. They put Skaven in it. There was a massive battle of Prague, big chaos battle in Prague, and Caleb Dark was protecting this princess that had been in it, quite a bit like Snow White. She was in like a glass coffin, and the Skaven got through the tunnels and they were up in there and they were flamethrowing everything and taking the guards out, and it was brilliant.
Sounds it.
So I sort of read that and I that was it. And I went out and got my first. I got a blister pack with free models in it. It was £1.50, I think I paid for the 3 models.
Oh, okay.
And that was it. I painted those 3 models, and I've sort of not looked back since, really.
Excellent. Well, for me, I like you, I couldn't really place why I like them. It's one of the only model ranges I've really liked all the models. I kind of I like the whole idea of the whole the race, dark, sneaky. Well, not dark. that's why I've never been a fan of warriors and dark elves. I'm not really into this whole like emo. Yeah, I love dark stuff. It's not really me.
Sort of gothic thing.
Yeah, but I like the kind of the almost like cackling type evil that they bring to the table.
They got a bit of comedy about them, haven't they?
Yeah.
Sort of like the Orcs and Goblins have in a way, where they're kind of like they take themselves very seriously and they're very focused. But looking on it, from the outside looking in, they come across as quite comical.
Exactly. And one of the things I've always liked in Warhammer is infantry. I've never been a massive fan of painting big monsters. You wouldn't
be able to tell that, would you? Not judging by your armies that you build.
What do you mean?
Well, you're like looking at them, or you're like shooting them off the table.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're the most effective in the game. I'm just saying that I quite like the models. Yeah, it's always been a thing when I'm not a massive fan of painting, even though I do it. I've just never been that infused. But the one thing I've always been infused about is painting Skaven. I don't know why. I don't like doing anything that's complicated. I'm very like methodical, so I wouldn't call myself a creative person. I'm good at reproducing things that I see or stealing ideas and put my own twist on it. But in terms of like you come up all the time with just random creative things, that's not me. And I think with Skaven, I've always liked the fact that I pick 20 men up and I can just plod through and paint by numbers. They suit my sort of style of painting. I don't know, I've always just liked them from that hobby perspective.
I've always suffered with that side of it, where I'm kind of I'm always trying to come up with ideas for unit fillers or different quirky things, conversions, that all that kind of stuff. That kind of stops me doing the I say basic. I don't mean basic as in process, but kind of focusing on doing 40 models of a certain kind and then adding all the stuff to it. All the kind of quirky stuff, I tend to do that first, and then that will motivate me to do the rank and file. Where you work the opposite way around, you kind of do the hard labour first, and then add the stuff afterwards.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like scary from a hobby perspective. I know it shouldn't be, and it's normally not once you start painting it. But I remember when I first did my Stegodon conversion, there was a conversion idea inspired by one of your Skaven models. I was like, oh, I don't know about this, and even when I was painting it, I wasn't quite sure and stuff. But there's something about just painting.
I had to rub your shoulders, didn't I? And tell you keep on with it. And you were like, I'm not sure. Going. No, it'll work. It'll be fine. Yeah, and it was.
Yeah. No, it did get in it. It's a shame it doesn't come out to play more. So Skaven. It's just something about it all I've always liked. I remember early battle reports in White Dwarf. Always look back on fondness. I think it was Andy Hoare or somebody playing a Wood Elf. Funny enough, 2 armies that I picked early on in the game. Skaven and Wood Elves, and there was a battle report where he had a Forest Dragon, and it was Deathmaster Snitch and a massive group of Skaven. I don't know if anybody remembers the particular one. I remember seeing the war dancers jumping into the back of the unit and all this kind of stuff. Looked great. And then Gareth Hamilton, who's I've met and played in real life, which is really bizarre because when I was growing up, he was one of the people that I looked in White Dwarf, thought, wow, your army's amazing, everything else, and I had the pleasure of playing him.
That first Skaven army that he had in White Dwarf was lovely. It's still one of my favourite armies, actually.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And didn't use undercoat.
No.
There you go. Man ahead of his time. So that was really good. So all those kind of things impact sort of a love with an army, I suppose. But and as a result, I think this is my 3rd Skaven army. I did one which I had in 5th edition. You probably remember playing against it or seeing it. I remember lending you bits of it. Yeah, I had that, which was tiny actually because it was in 5th edition and everything was
20
expensive.
Storm Vermin.
20 Storm Vermin, gold armor. Yeah, I had those, and I had Rat Ogres. I was there first. I had Rat Ogres. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Don't point at me and say you were there first.
I had Rat Ogres, man. I was kicking it for
you. What year were you born?
It doesn't matter.
What year were you born?
I don't know.
Come on.
Not for the podcast.
What year were you born?
Yeah, move on.
No, come on. No, this is relevant.
1974.
1974. So you were 12 when I started collecting Skaven.
There you go then.
Do one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay.
You never even heard of Skaven when I was collecting Skaven, boy.
No, that's true. But yeah, I did have Rat Ogres, so there we go. The fact they were all right then.
Don't point at me.
Don't look in my direction. Yeah. Anyway, so Skaven. So there's
Is that going to be like the sisters out?
No, it's not going to be the sisters.
Right, okay.
It's not. Yeah, so that was good. And I think so I had that, and then I had one that I was doing for 7th edition with the 7th edition book, which was green skin, black, very very atypical of that tournament.
Well, I took that off you, didn't I? I took that off you and I carried it on, and then just obviously the idea for the green skin, which was very kind of Marmite, wasn't it? Some people loved it and some people didn't. It was just, but yeah, no, it was just really quirky, that idea. But yeah, that was down to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed painting that one. That was quite good. That was me trying to work on contrast, and I thought green and black was about as contrasting as you can get.
Well, it worked with your lizards, didn't it? Because that kind of concept went onto your lizards, and it worked really well with that.
Yeah, I used exactly the same concepts on the Lizard. So, and then it sort of built from there, really. I started adding more. And then the new Skaven army is completely different to that. But yeah, so always been a fan. So anyway, that side, let's talk it. So let's talk straight into builds then, mate. You and me have not conflicting views, but
yes, we do.
we take different armies, shall we say, of yours.
We have a completely different outlook on the scale. I mean, you love all the fluff in it, and I do, but
you like to represent it in the game.
I like to represent it. Yeah, I actually like to play with those models.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
I like winning too much, but yeah. So let's start off. I mean, a general build these days, if you were looking for something, I mean, people refer to the ETC, the European Team Championships, as somewhere where you can look at builds that people use. Now, bearing in mind that these things are played under a composition system, so they're good for that system, doesn't mean they're necessarily good, but a lot of the concepts are the same. So a Skaven Bell list, for example, that has been doing well in the UK and at the ETC for the last, I don't know how many years. It's relatively a new phenomenon, it seems, in the UK scene over the last 12, 18 months. But actually, it had been doing well at the ETC for several years.
Yeah. I remember when you came back from the first year, didn't you? You said someone was running a Bell.
Yeah, and he was smashing face with it. And part of it's the line of sight system they use because you can hide it, but actually he didn't hide it most of the games. He just was running across the board of people with that and the A-bomb and everything else. So, and there was a couple of guys on the UK team still running it. I mean, there was a Twitter hashtag for Justice for Rob at one point. Rob from Two Gamer Radio podcast was running a Bell for a long time before anybody else picked it up. The Bell. So you'd have the typical list would look like a Greyseer on a Bell in a big unit of Storm Vermin, which is pretty much your whole core, with 3 units of 40 slaves, some gutter runners, and then your rares, your Walk Lightning Cannon, your A-bomb, and then it's sort of flavoured from there, really. Not a lot of variation in the standard list. You'd either have 1 to 2 assassins in the Bell unit to give it the extra combat punch, and the way the game has changed, that's been quite an effective option. Or you would have lots and lots of magic, basically. Maybe some rat swarms or rat darts, as they're known, the small units of 23 point rats and handlers, and then your rares. So you'd have a lot of them was A-bomb, wheel, cannon, or just 2 of them. Some people didn't like the wheel. I like the wheel. I thought it was
Doom
really
wheel
good.
kind of came more into it, didn't it? When after ogres came out,
yes,
suddenly really, really good against ogres, and obviously a lot of big creatures, in which there's been more and more of. Monstrous cavalry and stuff like that. So, which
goes to show you the change in the game, doesn't it? Because everyone was running infantry blocks, and the Doom wheel was pointless to a degree. Suddenly, monstrous cav come out, and you don't see many lists unless it's comped that don't have it. So
and it is, and also that toughness 6 makes a big difference.
Yes,
with, having a toughness 6 model on the board. It has definitely got its worth. There's no doubt about that. It's a great addition. I think it's one good. It's one of the great things about the Skaven book, where there's a lot of diversity in the specials and rares. Your core is just big blocks, but in saying that, Storm Vermin for 7 points each, I think they're a bargain.
Yeah, they're pretty good, actually. They are pretty good. I mean, they're weapon skill 4, initiative 5, which is not to be sniffed at, is it? So
no, not
with
at all.
halberds.
Yeah, with halberds. So and they they're a good job. I mean, especially when they're in the Bell unit, obviously, because they're unbreakable then. So
they've got heavy armor, armor basic. So you think of a Empire Halberdier man who is leadership 7. Now, technically, a Storm Vermin is less than that, but seeing them at less than leadership 10 is not a common occurrence. You've got 5 up save versus their 6 up save. You've got better weapon skill as a Storm Vermin, and you're 7 points, they're 6 points. So you're paying a point for quite a bit of bonus, I think, and the higher initiative and everything else that goes with it. So, I mean, you can't compare them necessarily directly, but it gives you some idea point wise, doesn't it? It's a good choice. And again, you see some builds with them. You see non-Bell lists can often have a horde of those with a couple of assassins and a warlord in. I quite like that. I think that's got some legs in it, actually, for people that don't. Because the Bell can be, in some tournaments, it'll be amazing. For 5 games, you'll stomp everyone, and then the guy in the last one goes, Iron Blaster through your Bell. Oh, he's dead. Turn 1, and you just get run over. So it can be quite
also, do you find when you're playing with when you got the Bell, it's it kind of makes most of your games play the same way.
Yeah, it does. It quite often does, actually. A fun way, mind. But yeah, it can be a bit samey. Actually, I think the Bell is an odd one because it ended up being quite a competitive item. But I think when you first glance at it and read it, you think it's more fun because the actual Bell itself, the effect of the Bell, isn't that great.
It doesn't do a lot. Anything.
Yeah, I mean, half time, I don't even ring it most of the time. Only when I want to do the 1d6 magic movement bit. But apart from that, I don't really ring it. But it's just the fact that it's unbreakable that offers the Greyseer death protection when everyone's running in an environment where everybody's running death. And And, with Fencer's Blades and Scarm, he's actually quite hard to kill and assassinate in the front.
Yeah.
Whereas what I found when I was using the double seer list that I won that tournament back in last January, not this January, the one before, just before the real massive shift where Ogres had just come out, beating Ogres was a worry. And a lot of armies, you always still had to worry about that double seer bunker being assassinated, and you had to block it up. And when loads of monstrous cavalry came around, it became quite hard to actually do it in points reliably. And then Doom and Darkness and all the rest of it. But you don't have that. The Bell just removes it all. And that big deep unit with the Storm Vermin in that can expand wide whether it wants to. You can have assassins. The Bell takes up a big footprint, so it's very hard to do lots of wounds to the unit. It's a lot of things, isn't it, that make it competitive, but it's not the Bell itself.
Solid, yeah.
Yeah, it's not actually the effect of the Bell. The effect of the Bell seems like quite a fun, quirky choice, doesn't it? So,
well, yeah, that is. I mean, because most of the time it doesn't really have much effect on the game at all. Every now and again you'll get something. Or you'll get greedy and you'll roll the 3 6s,
Yeah,
because you've done that.
I've done it twice. Yeah, I've done it in a tournament. Have I done it twice in a tournament? No, I've done it once at the club and once in a tournament. Won both games 20-0 though, but still, it is.
Well, it depends when it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in both games it happened late, so it was okay. But yeah, it's interesting. I really enjoy using it. Actually, it's one of the it's an iconic piece of kit, isn't it? That 5th edition book for me with the seer pointing on the bell, front of the bell. That's the piece of artwork that kind of got me into the Skaven. So, so that would be what a reasonably competitive. Standard net list, as it's probably known now, is called. I mean, what would you run then, Wayne? I know what you would run. You'd run anything, but if you had to pick a list now that you were going to run, and you didn't want to go down the Bell streamline route, what would you run?
Right, you mean from a competitive point of view, or just what I like to play with?
You can do either. Say you wanted to go and have a mixture.
Why are you saying that? Whenever it comes to a competitive build, I tend to kind of look at it. I know what is competitive because obviously I know what you're running, and I know, I'd take advice from you, and I know what I could put something together that is competitive. But I just find that list incredibly boring to play with. Yeah,
because you're more of a combat guy, aren't you?
I like it's kind of I do prefer pushing the army forward and having lots of combats going on, and I just think Skaven would be like this massive surge army that would kind of be trying to just win by attrition, really. Just sort of swarming all over you and sort of grinding you down. But I love running rat ogres. Everyone says that they're rubbish. And to be fair, they are very much overpointed compared to most monstrous infantry, and they do tend to run as soon as they lose a combat. And yes, they are. They're by far one of the worst choices in the book. But saying that,
only for points. I don't think they're that bad.
No, they're not. It's just that when you weigh up, say off the top of my head, 352 points for 8 rat ogres with 4 pack masters, and that's without a master bread. When you look at that chunk of points and what you could spend it on, that's when you suddenly go, "Oh no, I wouldn't take them."
No,
but I do anyway, and I just I lose in most games, but every now and again they'll surprise someone. They'll go in, and it's always the hit rolls, because they're only whip skill 3. So you kind of, unless you're fighting other slaves, which they're great against other slaves because obviously you've got loads, which is always the best thing against slaves, loads of attacks, and then you'll grind through them really quick. Saying that though, I don't often get to play against other Skaven armies, so
no.
And strength 5 in the current meta isn't that great.
No,
because you're fighting so much armor at the moment that strength 5 doesn't really do a lot, especially with the one-up armor saves.
Yeah,
but I'll still run them, and I always will. I love rogues. I like painting them as well. That's another thing. I love painting rogues.
Where do you stand on the grey seer? Would you? I know you have done, but if you were thinking you want a reasonably decent result. So we're not talking. You're not going to go in there thinking, oh yeah, I want to smash face at all costs. But if you wanted to think, I want a really fairly decent result, would you be taking the grey seer?
Yeah.
Even under a comp system, you'd still do it.
Yeah, I think you have to because purely because 13th gives you something that the rest of the army doesn't, and it's any Skaven player knows that, and no matter how competitive your build is or how well the game is going, 13th at the right time will win you the game.
And just generally the magic as a whole, I think,
it will I say the magic in general. I mean, Scorch is great in certain situations. A couple of warp lightnings. Crack's cool is amazing spell. Yeah, one of my favourites. But 13th will be that you get people 6 dice to 13th and it just ruins your day.
I mean, I can't remember how many games I've seen decided by 13th. You take the South Coast GT this year, the guy that come third was Skaven, both games, last turn, Vampire Lord, no lookout, sir, because he played for it all game. Crack's cool, 6, take him off. Know, I mean, even if he didn't, he'd still scored a lot of points clearing out the other stuff. So, real game-winning spells on that. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, with the Dispel and everything else. And the problem with the smaller wizards is it's not like in some other armies when you can have level 2s. They don't really... Well, you can have level 2s, but I don't really feel like you get the full mix of the ability of the spells when you take just warlocks. I don't know, it just seems a bit bland to me to do it. The Grey Seer adds it. And also, from a pure fluff perspective and models perspective, I love the Grey Seers, the look of them with the horns and everything else. It just seems wrong not to take one. I'm sure there are people going, we would say that because they're bent level 4s. But
mind you, if you look at the background, you read a lot of the stories, the Grey Seers usually tend to be in, the bigger armies. So kind of like 2,400 point armies. I mean, a Grey Seer on a bell, you wouldn't ever see. If you were doing it to the background, an army of that size would never have a bell in it.
No, I suppose not.
Because you're talking the bell and the furnace would come out for the massive armies. You're talking, there's 5,000-6,000 points.
Yeah,
they would come out for those armies. So so in an army of that, I know it's the rules you can, but to the background, you wouldn't see those things.
No, you're probably right. It's a bit like the Empire. It's one of my main real problems with getting into the Empire and getting attached to the fluff. Is the most competitive options are ones that make no sense. Like he's got 2 Archlectors. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying. So why is an Archlector leading a 2,400 point army? Why is the War Altar of Sigmar in a 2,000 point army? Why is one of the 12 steam tanks in a 2,000? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm still taking them, but in terms of playing an army long term, I like the whole generic aspect. So you can make your own story up. If you're asked to write a story, you can get into it, or if you've got a theme, you can get into it. But I can't see an Empire army really with a strong theme that includes a war altar and a steam tank and a 2,400 point army. I don't know. There's just something about it wrong. And Skaven for me, I think, you're probably right. A bell isn't necessarily going to make its way in there, but it's still generic enough. It's not like there is one bell, is there? There's, arguably lots of bells. I'd
imagine that every Grey Seer commissions his own bell to be built, and obviously then
some warlords might. You never know. It just happens to be that what Warhammer's like.
Why would that happen?
Well, because they just think, I want a bell to ring a ding ding.
But they can't use it.
Why not? The Rat Ogre rings it. That'll be all right.
No, because it's all infused with magic and it's the whole...
Then Warlock Engineer dudes will do it.
Don't you read the background?
Yeah. I just like poking you. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk then about...
But that's what they have the wall litter for, isn't it? When they have their little bit of, grandiose. They
strut around on the wall litter.
They're not going to build a screaming bell and they go, it's great, isn't it? Shame we can't use it.
So what would you say then for new Skaven players, going back to this topic about what you would take? What are your 1+ items if you were going to be reasonably competitive? What things would you take that you think, I've got to have those in the list?
Warp Lightning Cannon.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because it just kills anything.
Yeah.
When it works, it will kill anything in the game. Mm-hmm. And every now and again, you'll get the template down as well.
Yeah.
On a block, and it's just brilliant. You get that moment where it lands in the center, you roll Strength 8 or 10, and it'll just kill the world.
Agree. Next.
A-bomb.
Yeah, why?
Because same thing. When it's good, it's amazing. When it works, it just slaughters everything.
Yeah,
I've had games where literally I could have just put the A-bomb on the table on its own, and it's won me the game. It just cleared everything.
Everyone's had those games, yeah.
And then other times it gets shot off by a cannon.
All that time you took 2.
Oh yeah, and it didn't happen, did it?
No,
it
didn't.
just didn't.
We joke about it, but you did. We thought it was going to be great, and it just turned out that balance was better.
It comes out with it comes down to sometimes a lot of the times the armies you get put against. I mean, if I'd got put against, I don't know,
vampires, say,
a lot of block armies and stuff like that without the war machines, I reckon I would have had a field day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I got most of the armies that I played against had the tools to deal with them quite easily. So it just didn't work. But on another day, it could have been great.
Yep. No, I agree with you. Okay, good. Anything else? So we've already mentioned Grey Seers for the reason that magic, leadership, general coolness, they're in there.
Obviously, you've got to take a BSB.
Yeah, BSB, no brainer.
Because even with the leadership 10,
you want the re-rolls, it just makes it so much better.
And obviously they get ground down as the game goes on, so you've got to have it.
Yeah, and if you happen to have the +1 leadership banner, it's not a bad combo when you've still got 2 ranks of slaves on ridiculous leadership.
Yeah, and the slaves. Probably the standout choice for a competitive list is the slaves, because the slaves would allow you to do they are the whole reason for you being able to have the great magic phase. Just creating time, really, they'll always give you, 4 to 5 turns.
Yeah.
Where everything else can do its thing.
I agree with you.
If you don't take the slaves, then you are struggling.
I don't even think you need 120. I mean, I'm painting an army at the minute, and I've only got 2 blocks of 40. So
2 blocks are enough.
Yeah.
Blocks
and that's how I would deal with comp systems. I would instantly, because in a more balanced list, if you're playing scenarios, so you're in the US, or maybe you're attending this Blood and Glory tournament that Ben Curry from the Bad Dice podcast is running, and you want Fortitude that they keep telling about. You can't get that from the slaves, so you're going to want another unit anyway. And I think it's just wrong when you haven't got a clan rat unit in a Skaven army. Don't get me wrong, I've used a Skaven army for 6 months of last year that didn't have any clan rats in, but before that I had 2 units. But it just seems odd.
I've used when I've been running my clan Molder armies. A lot of those haven't got the.
But there's a theme. But
because obviously I'm spending it all on giant rats and Pat Masters, rat ogres, so.
But it does seem, for me, it does seem odd. I mean, it's the first unit I painted because I thought it made sense fluff wise. But they're a good unit as well. But Fortitude points here. So if you're in comp systems anyway, then you're not, and you can't take 3 slaves, or slaves are a pool choice in some of these systems or something. Then 2's totally fine. But I agree with you. I think that's spot on. I think they're the choices. They'd be the first things on my list. Warp Lightning Cannon, A-bomb given, Grey Seer given, slaves of some description given. Everything else I think is up for a mix depending on the system you're playing in. Probably. I'd normally have at least one supporting Warlock to carry a Doom Rocket. I quite like the Condenser. I think on a level 1 or a level 2. This is a scary prospect to fight, especially with all the monstrous infantry running around and monstrous cavalry and things. Helps chip away. The Bell's certainly not a 1+. I think it's good, but I still think there's other builds you can do. I think the Double Assassin is quite good. Another quick one. I think you'd like playing with that way, actually. Double Assassin in the right hand. Oh, you have?
I've had one game with it, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I had a bit of an epic fail with the first Assassin, though. He came out, I thought, this brilliant, it's going to kill the world, and he just didn't.
No.
And he died.
I mean, I think they're actually more scary on paper than they are in real life sometimes, because I've only got 3 or 4 attacks, depending on the kit you've given them. So
I think it was 4 attacks he had.
Yeah.
And he didn't hit with one.
No,
he just went in and just fluffed it.
Yeah, they're not amazing, but that's pretty good fun. You got those. The Doom Wheel is well liked in some composition packs. If you're playing under those, you won't get all 3 in the army. And arguably the other 2 are better. But I really like the Doom Wheel. I'm a big fan. You're a fan of the Doom Wheel as well.
Yeah, Doom Wheel's great. It'll always. It's always got that random element with the movement and the strength of the lightning and everything else. But I've had games where I've actually preferred it to the A-bomb because it's been more consistent.
Yeah, balanced, reliable. Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. I mean, and we should say, I suppose, the standard Skaven deployment with those rares is you normally have 1 on each flank because you don't tend to want the Doom Wheel standing next to the A-bomb with its D6 wounds, and then your blocks in between. And that, unfortunately, when you were saying about dull play, that can be how the Bell list works, isn't it? Bell somewhere in the middle, one block and a slave one side, 2 blocks of slaves, and the Doom Wheel the other side, and that's basically it.
I like running the A-bomb in the middle.
Yeah, that's good. I've seen that used. That's another way of using the A-bomb quite well. Is I've seen it used in conjunction with the Bell unit. So you got big deep Bell unit and the A-bomb, and it's just a 2-man army, and the rest of it's a delivery system. With the double assassins, I think that works particularly well. So, I agree with you. A bit like years ago. I mean, we've talked about it before, probably on previous shows. Both being ex-Beastman players. The Giant used to be like that in 7th, didn't it?
Yeah.
Middle of the board,
Yeah,
first
I
drop.
used to play that in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
I always remember. I think I mentioned it before. Me and Rob Lane. It was table 1. It was a Pompey pillage actually, and both our giants were beastmen on beastmen, but both the giants were deployed in the centre, but we both wanted to get our giants into the besticle blocks, and they actually walked past each other.
Bloodthirst to Siren Storm style in 7th.
They just strolled past each other, and we sort of.
But I'd meant.
We smiled at each other as we were doing it because we had no intention of letting them fight each other.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And what would you say the general play style of the Skaven is? How would you describe it?
Well, I play kind of fast and furious with them. I'm very, very aggressive. I don't kind of mess about with subtleties. I want to sort of pen people back early doors. But then when you watch the good Skaven players, or let's say the competitive Skaven players, they don't play like that at all. They're very standoffish, very safe, and it's all about, like I said before, buying time for everything else to work really, really well. Whereas I tend to kind of play it as you read it really in the books, where it's this massive heaving. Surging
disposable force.
Yeah, completely disposable force where the only person that really matters in the army is the person at the top of the food chain. So if it's your Grey Seer or your Warlord, they don't really give a damn about the rest of the army. As long as they win and they survive at the end of it, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much how Skaven think. You know, even if they've got some brilliant hero champion that's fighting their cause, you know, secretly they want him to die anyway because they think, well, he might usurp my position later on. So that, you know, there's no sort of love lost between allies dying.
Yes.
You know, because they're all seen as rivals, all of them. So that's how I like to play it, and I find it's just really fun because I think that's why I'm going to enjoy playing the Orcs and Goblins so much, because in a similar way they're kind of like that. A different mindset in the fact that Orcs and Goblins just love to fight.
Yeah.
So it's all about them just getting into a scrap. So it's not about any kind of like treacheries as such. They just like it. They just like a punch up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably less aggressive than you, but mind you, in the right matchup, that, as I say, you can often see like really experienced Skaven players when they fancy it, because it's got Aebon Bell opposite the other person's army, march flying forward first turn. You know, that's when you want to get aggressive against some of the defensive armies. You think you're up for a win. You can do it. I've played the Polish Skaven player who's been the highest scoring Skaven player for about the last 3 years. Highest scoring player in a tournament, I think, in at least one of the years. Every time I've played him with both the lists, I've played him with my Skaven. We had almost a mirror matchup, and when I played Brett's against him, and both games straight across, straight at the guts, and that's how he plays. So I mean, it can be played that way. A lot of how I played it when I was at ETC last year, I did it in some games. I did it in I played Austrian Dwarfs, exactly that, straight up the guts, straight across the middle. Let's have it, straight over the top. Did it against the High Elves I played. I did it in the other Skaven matchup I played. I did it in a few lists, actually. It is, in the right matchups, it is an aggressive list.
Yeah.
But generally, if you're unsure, if you're playing something that's running at you, like Ogres, probably Warriors now, I would have thought, I haven't played it with the new Skaven, but I could see how I would be that sort of thing I was talking about, where you have, if you didn't fancy it, you might well have the A-bomb outside slightly and the Doomwell outside slightly. A block ready to fly its front across the front of the Bell unit to make sure that nothing can attack the Greyseer that you don't want to attack the Greyseers. There's no space for him to land.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can require early on a bit of width between the blocks. You see a lot of people deploying them very tight, which doesn't give you many options when you want to swing the back of a unit out round something or charge something off at an angle. Because with the 18 inches of the Bell, you can be a bit more free of your movement. Generally, you want to keep them quite compact because of the battle standard, as you know, but it's still been only 12 inches. But the 18 does allow you to pin something quite nicely.
I always thought that the Bell should be the battle standard.
Yeah, it makes sense
the
to me.
bell itself should be kind of like with the Slan, where you kind of have you've got the Slan, and obviously he's the battle standard bearer as well. You can upgrade him to that. That's if the Greyseer is on the bell should, because it's kind of like the most iconic thing to the Skaven race. Is you know, a Greyseer on a bell. It's like the ultimate power within their society, apart from the Hornrat himself. So it's just a natural rallying point for the army.
It is reflected though in the toll result that you can get, where you can get a 24-inch battle standard. Unfortunately, it doesn't work the way most effects work now in the last 2 turns. It's only in that turn. But I know what you're saying. I agree.
And also that
make it better.
And also that would give you the 18 inches.
Yes.
See.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Indeed. So that's
another gripe with the book. Just we'll talk about changes, right? I cannot understand, right? It really does annoy me that giant rats don't count towards core, even though giant rats are bred by Clan Moulder to be beasts of war, right? That's their whole purpose, is to be used in armies and for conflict, right? Slaves, on the other hand, are not for combat. They're not for armies. They're for the menial tasks. They're for keeping like Skaven like running. You know, that's what they're for. They've no kind of military purpose whatsoever. Yet they count towards core. Now, as much as I love the book, and Vettel, apart, Jeremy Vettel did do a good job. Apart, there was a lot of stuff that needed to be reworded and clarified and stuff like that. But I just don't get that. I've never got that. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No, I agree with you. But anyway, that rant aside, I 100% get what you're saying. Going back to that playstyle thing. So yeah, there's the aggressive playstyle. There's also what I call the 18-inch line playstyle, where you sort of amber out, like against your warriors or your aggressive builds, amber out a little bit. and get into range to zap them with your 24-inch magic, and then you start shuffling backwards a little bit, and you let your A-bomb and your wheel do a bit of damage, your Doom Rocket, your Brass Orb, all the other stuff, and you're almost trying to make something happen by just throwing stuff at them and just seeing what happens and chipping away, as we've mentioned loads of times with the Skaven, and that's the other play style of doing it, and that's the bit where, as you say, it can get quite repetitive, I think, in that terms when you're flying forward like that, when you're not flying forward, and just shooting them, especially if you end up, it can be frustrating as well, that kind of play style, because if you roll the magical 8-9 on the miscast and all your warlocks take a wound early, you suddenly don't want to be casting Warp Lightning and giving away 100 odd points a thing. But so yes, I can see that. Now, I suppose we better do general to round this little segment off of a little recap on Skaven and competitive wise and things. If there's two things I want to do. One is a few quick tips, which we'll talk about in a sec, just little small bullet points. The other one is just a quick word on dealing with composition systems. I mean, we spoke about it briefly, but if you have got pool choices, I think it's trying to be clever and also trying to really get in your head what your must-haves are. So for me, like we've said, your A-bomb, cannon, seer, 2 slave minimum, that for me is key, and then building up around that and really trying to shave what you can and can't deal with, and also looking at quirky choices. If people in your local area have never seen double assassin, it's going to catch people out. A bit like the Bell listed in the UK, no one had ever seen it, comes out and it just ruins people. I still think there's some market, depending on the type of list going around. When ogres are all around, Censer Bearers were probably a reasonable choice. No one ran them because it wasn't internet worthy, but I think there's a few quirky choices in there that could
I like
be done.
Censer Bearers. I've run them quite often. I like them. I like them.
Fellblade's a good one, isn't it? You didn't see many, and you see quite a few of that now kicking around, and there's nothing wrong with that. So so just be a little bit quirky.
My Warlord's never died when he's taken a Fellblade.
No.
A lot of people say, "Oh, yeah," but he ended up dying. But I've never had it.
I've played against it a lot, and I've never seen anyone die from it. I'm sure it does happen, obviously, like everything, like miscasting happens. But it's quite scary. It makes you stand off it because you worry about it. Every time, well, not every time, but I'd imagine anybody who's played it, it'll tell you that he goes in and fluffs 2 or 3 attacks and hits once and does like 2 wounds or something. But it's scary enough to make you stand off, I think.
Yeah.
So let's run down quick tips then. We've got literally 4 minutes of talking about this. My couple of tips would be something like the following. The first one is, keep rat swarms or anything that is likely to die in one go. So rat swarms, rat darts, small units of gut runners, keep them at 6 of the A-bomb. Number one, that happens all the time. People forget it's not immune to psychology. Make sure you have a unit covering the bell if you don't want it to go forward on its first dice roll. So your first dice roll is only 1d6. So the chances of having to move the unit is high. So if you don't want it to go forward, just angle the slave unit is inevitably standing next to it slightly across the corner so that it can't go within an inch when it does the magic ringer. Protect your Gracier at all costs. If he dies early, the game's over. Most of the time there'll be people saying, "Oh, I've won games." I have as well, but against anyone who's decent, that's not going to happen. They're going to capitalize on it and ruin you with panic on things on the slaves and just breaking them on silly combat res. So keep the Gracier alive at all costs. Be choosy what you waste things on. There's no worries about popping that. You don't have to pop the Doom Rocket early. I mean, famous joke we were talking about the other day. I did at the ETC last year with the Skaven. I was playing the Australian Wood Elf player, a really great game. My A-bomb had put me right back in it. And one of the main key tactics with the Skaven is to ignore everything else that's going on and delete the wizard bunker, because the chances are you're going to kill the wizard. So stuff's pounding on you and killing slaves in the plenty, and you're just like, it's like eye on the target. We're going to get this block, and that's exactly what happened with the Wood Elf player. He's fighting me. There's stuff dying both sides, and all I'm doing is slowly chipping away at wherever the level 4 is. And it comes to a point where I get that phase where a big dice, the bell scorches, everything goes right, and everything gets chipped away. I've got gut runners standing next to it, and you just throw loads of stuff in, and it leaves the level 4 on 1 wound, and I'm like, oh. And I'm sort of looking through my army again, checking I've shot everything and magicked everything and I have. And then I'm like, I've got a Doom Rocket. And it was miles away. It was near the back of the board. And it was like, 7 dice Doom Rocket landed right on the head of the level 4 and killed it and took it out. And, it's a prime example, really. If you don't need to waste it. And it's that real efficient use of your toys, I think, is the key to it. But ultimately, it's the opposite applies. You don't want to sit on the Doom Rocket and then leave him in the front of a slave unit, which brings me to another tip. Don't put your Warlocks in a slave unit that's going to get in combat, because clever players won't kill the Warlock and you won't be able to shoot into combat. Yep. So there's little things like that. It's not rocket science at the end of the day. A lot of people take the mick out of Skaven not being highly complicated, but then you don't see them. You see them doing well, obviously, but you don't see multiple players, I don't think, anyway, consistently doing well with them, because they're still like anything else. You've still got to play them, and there is a tactic to it. Yeah. But you soon learn through games little things that happen. Another one is bailing wizards out the back of the unit and then leaving them next to the slave unit that's about to pop. The slave unit dies and kills him. All these stupid things that you do when you play practice games that you don't necessarily realise when you start playing it need to happen. So they would be a few simple little tips from me. What about you, Wayne? You got anything?
I quite like the instead of using swarms in front of the army, actually using behind units that you're not overly confident about. For example, rat ogres. If you're going in with the rat ogres, you're going to get charged by the rat ogres. Now, a lot of the time with them staying on a combat just comes down to how obviously how they do in the combat killing wise. So and that's always very dicey. Even though I love using them, it's always very dicey. But if you stick the two swarms behind that unit, it kind of gives you that safeguard of, right, if they do pop, if they do break and they're off, you've got something to stop what's, rather than suddenly you've got one big unit that's crashing down the side of your army, or it's near the centre, because they usually keep the rat ogres near my general and BSB, and then you haven't got this great big hole. That way, if you're getting charged, you've got the swarms behind that unit, it stops, you can counter it then, you can do something about it. And it kind of seems like, take something because something else won't work. Well, if something's not going to work, why take it? But
that's the Skaven, yeah.
But that's because otherwise we'd all have the same army.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly important if you're playing with a non-bell, because the bell you can actually afford to. If people really run into you at turn 5 and something breaks that shouldn't break, you're probably not going to die. It's just going to be fine. That's part of the safety of that list. You can even turn your flank or your rear to it if you're really worried about it. Yeah. But as you say, if you're not and you're using a bunker, having a secondary screen in front of your rubbish, because it will happen. It's happened to me. That double 11 break test on a slave unit that pops can absolutely end your game. So having something behind it, I like it. Good tip.
Also, whatever you do when you're playing Skaven, at some point use a flamethrower
if you've got one.
Because when it works.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
See, I think there's another comp choice that people will be like, oh, he's got a flamethrower as you're taking their models off. Yeah, it can happen.
They're brilliant. When they do what they're supposed to do, you can see the pain in your opponent's eyes. Thinking, I underestimated that.
It wasn't too bad for the 75 points, whoever it cost. Yeah,
definitely. But it's brilliant. Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. But it's there's loads of good choices in it. For fun, especially from like a club gaming environment. Small units of gut runners, small units of sensor bearers. I don't tend to use the rat darts because I just found them, because of the way I play, I found them more annoying than anything else because they just got in the way.
I painted 3 as one of the first things of my current Skaven army, and I can't see me using more than 2. I get in the way, like you say.
But big blocks of giant rats I love. I love the Master Moulder. It's one of my favourite things in the army.
Yeah.
Because he's only got 2 attacks. Oh, 3 attacks, obviously, because a whip is when he's in the front rank if you don't give him a great weapon. But I find him great because he always surprises people because they ask for the stats and I go, and as soon as you say 2 attacks, they go, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many times that 2 attacks makes a big
combat,
difference. Yeah.
I quite like the idea of just units of 20, one on each flank, leadership 9 running at war machines or just wide.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I want to paint for mine actually, just to give it a go.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're looking at trim points for comp systems and things like that, they might be still really useful. So
I usually use 2 blocks of 35 and they're just good fun. They're just really good. I mean, it does make a difference when the Master Moulder does die. It's amazing how much that 1 pip of leadership makes a big difference.
We've played so many games when your Master Moulder's dead and it's like, oh, leadership 8, oh, panic, come off, Salamander's taking you off or something like that.
But then that's another good thing about the bell, because suddenly you've got, with the 18-inch leadership,
especially the +1 leadership banner.
The giant rats become more effective because you can run them wider, which naturally that's how you play them.
Yeah.
And you've got obviously the extra leadership from the general. So that's good as well. So even when I'm running the bell, I always run them 2 big blocks so I can get aggressive down the flanks.
I agree, mate. I agree. It's all good. So we could probably be here for ages talking about Skaven because we're both big fans and played a lot of games with them. But I think we'll leave it for there. So hopefully for the listener particularly that requested it, and also on the back of us voting them the most powerful army in Warhammer in the last one. Well, no, you didn't. But, okay, I did. It was probably worth just addressing why, really, and talking about them. That's not an excuse for you all to go out and buy them, because, knowing us, in about 2 months' time they'll be rubbish because 4 new books have come out or something.
It'd be very hard for me to put them as top army when you've lost as many games as I have with them.
Yeah, well, this is it. And it just goes to show you what a good book in a way is, because we're talking about it being the potential boring power build, but also I do think, like you, they're one of the best armies potentially for club games if you've got the right stuff. Most variety that you can put out there, you can have a cracking game with just hordes of rats and toys, because this is the thing. Like, I mean, we'd talk about it in our story of the week, but we played a hobby game in the week, and I had an Empire army that had a lot of stuff, but it was just all men, and they all did the same thing. Now the rats, whilst you have a lot of rats, because of the point values, you also get a lot of little silly toys that you might not take, like Doom Flayers and stuff that lets you do different things and a bit more tactical finesse. So really good book either way. So hopefully that's given you some tips on the do's for and don'ts for Skaven when you're starting out. And after the break, we're going to talk from the other scale. What scares us as Skaven generals? What is the way to beat them? So we'll see you shortly.
This is the War Room.
And we're back. So, on to the opposite end of the table then. We've talked about tips and tricks to do whilst playing the Skaven. So, what is it that worries us as Skaven generals, Wayne? So, what is it that you dislike?
Everything.
Combat. Yeah.
My biggest worry is decent players.
Players better than myself.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them.
Well, that aside, in terms of builds, in terms of matchups, in terms of tactics, what is it you don't like?
So much. I think because the level that me and you play at, I mean, my level of player is, is a lot lower than yours, and obviously knowledge, because obviously you get a lot more games in than I do. So yeah, I'm kind of worried about pretty much everything. When I'm not worried, but I see concern in everything I play against, because obviously the builds I used are so much more fragile than what you use. Obviously with the rogues and stuff like that, there's a potential for things that aren't necessarily a problem for most Skaven players to be a problem for me. So the kind of the pitfalls of playing against stuff is quite a bit bigger.
Sure,
So all the usual stuff, like the real kind of fast smash 'em up armies, like warriors at the moment.
Yeah,
being able to deal out high quantity of attacks, and it don't have to necessarily be high strength. 4's enough.
Yeah.
Can kill stuff, and having the armor where you know that you can't do any damage back. They're always a worry.
So you say warriors and Empire in that vein you don't like playing against?
Yeah, because obviously with the Empire, the right build of Empire can literally take all your toys off, in 1 or 2 turns. I mean, when I played Gareth and Bad Dice, when we played at Pompey Pillage, and I was running a Vermin Lord, so but literally because of the war machines he had, and he was just right, 10 from the back, 10 from the back. 10. I think it was in 2 turns I lost anything that could do any damage to him. Literally, I took off the Doom Wheel, the A-Bomb, the Vermin Lord. I think the
Vermin Lord.
Just took a lot off. And there was just like a pile of big models in one corner, and that's what the Empire can do against the army. I
agree. I do agree. Mine would be similar, actually. I always worry about warriors. I'd not played them with the new book. I'm sure it's probably not as bad as I think it is, but I would probably have a hard time with that. The amount of attacks they kick out, even Corn Chariots going into the slaves, you'll soon burn through the slaves, and then you're thinking, what have I got which beats their units? And a lot of the time it's shooting and things like that, but you need time. It's all about time and delaying them, really, to make that. With those ultra aggressive armies, it is about time. It's just pure time and how much you can chip away and how much you can force them, especially with things like warriors that don't have rerolls. Sometimes static resolution is so much better than attacks, because eventually they'll fluff, break, lose by 1, the battle standard, hopefully you've killed or done something clever with to keep it out of the way. All those kind of things. They would worry me. Anything, I'm always worried, and this is where we spoke about this in the last show, where for the bell list, especially in normal Warhammer with normal line of sight, would worry me, is the amount of cannons around. My primary concern is the Grey Seer dying, and if you've got a few people have said to me over the last year, how do you deal with the Bell Skaven? Kill the Grey Seer. chuck something into him. So a good Skaven player is going to make it so hard that in some cases, it would depend on your army, it might be impossible. But if you've got Empire cannons, I'd be ignoring the A-bomb and the Doom Wheel, and I'd be shooting but 2 cannons through that bell until he's dead.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to get diced off the table sometimes. Someone will just pass all the ward saves. But people go, they worry about it as well through lack of knowledge. So they don't shoot it because they think it'll ring the bell and get the result where it'll blow the cannons up. But you can't roll that result on the when a cannon hits it. I think it's only 1d6.
It's only 1d6.
Yeah,
yes,
so you can't actually ring it. Yeah. But coy Skaven players will keep calm while you're telling yourself that out loud. They're going, "Oh no, I can't ring it." They're like, just nodding. So don't worry about it. Just shoot it every turn. That's what I do. 10 from the back, 10 from the back, 10 from the back. The Skaven player will be like, "Oh my god, anyone soon he's going to die," and he will die. And then in which case, if it happens late game, it's not going to make any difference to you. This is the worry about it. People who have done it and failed will tell you that what happens is the Skaven player wards it for 4 turns, and the A bombs run through them on 4 and 5, and it's out the back somewhere killing them. So that is a little bit of a worry. But if you've taken a rounded list, with fire magic or static res units can hold the A-bomb up, you can limit the A-bomb to doing not a lot of damage with parking the right unit in front of it. Even if it's to give up the unit, you'll do enough. Also, as Skaven players, you'll know, Wayne, the A-bomb, once it's taken a couple of wounds, dies incredibly easy. Yeah. People seem to think it's this environmental thing, but it's only toughness 5, which is a big difference from toughness 6. The regen obviously makes it big, but regen being regen is exactly that. You have those phases where you're like, I've done 9 out of 9 4+, and then the next phase and you've done none and it just dies.
Do you remember that tournament when I got charged in the flank by 20 skeletons with a flaming banner? On the A-bomb, and I thought, happy days, here we go. And he went, 20 skeletons, and he went, they got a flaming banner. Yeah. Took it off in one turn.
Exactly, yeah. It does happen. So, the A-bomb, I'd just say don't be afraid of it. It inevitably, if you're chucking your ultimate night bus of Vampire Lord Doom in there, it's going to end up surviving on a wound, rolling a 1 and killing your Vampire Lord on the D3 wounds.
I've done it to you a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen. So don't do it. Just don't do it.
He said that the first game, and the second game he went, I can't be that unlucky twice. He went in again.
Exactly.
Boom, take him off.
I've learned the hard way, a little bit like in 7th edition when I was using the vampires, and I would charge into the front of the plague furnace. It'll be fine. He won't roll an 8 or a 10. 8. Toughness test, crumble, dead. It's still a really good unit that a lot of people don't use, but it's those kind of things. So just don't be stupid. But that goes for anything with what you're doing. But the A-bomb can just be given stuff. I mean, it's random moves, so you can control its movement to a degree. And if it's out of the way, if it's deployed in the center of the army and it's in a good matchup and it's running at you, obviously you've got to deal with it front on. But if it's deployed wide, in a slightly iffy matchup, you can give it something to keep it out of the way. So I think if you can control the A-bomb and you can put the Seer under a lot of pressure, you're on the right lines to beating them. At the end of the day, they are a fairly solid list, so there's not a lot that's going to make him really do it. But I find people running at me full pelt, and especially if you've got flyers, going over the back or in positions where it forces the Skaven player to bunch up, so that they don't get charged from multiple sides and things. It is a really good way of putting them under pressure.
I find opening up a flank as well. If your opposing player can open up one of your flanks, suddenly you're really conscious of space and being able to kind of juggle units, and then it all gets very messy. And
especially if the Skaven player is coming for you, because oddly, it's not really wide, is it? I mean, most competitive Skaven armies are only 4 blocks wide. So if you think of that in 4 times 5 wide with a gap in between, it's not a big army width wise. And I agree.
That's why I run the big 35s of Giant Rats, because they're only 155 points each. And with the steadfast, they can hold up stuff for a while, and if it's lighter stuff, they can beat it in combat. And they're just 2 nice, cheap, fast moving units that can kind of stop people kind of crowd around you early on in the game.
No, I agree. And also, the other thing with it is if they're not running a bell, death magic, doom and darkness, and a panic test on that bunker will definitely hurt once they're running. They're not reliably coming back. Death magic generally, 4-up ward protection is still really no protection against death. When you're that low leadership, you're going to roll too many dice. Death is horrible for a Skaven player. Even in the bell list, it's horrible. Don't snipe the Seer, snipe the battle standard. The amount of people who play death and go, there's no point. It's like, well, he's only got 5-up ward, the battle standard that's in that unit, and he's only leadership 5 or 6, so 6 probably. So he's going to die. Death magic, horrid. And most people not most people, but a lot of people have got access to that, and that's good. And ultimately, the one that people forget about is ranks. In a game where there's a lot of monstrous cavern things, people don't have as many as it used to. But what always scares me is vampire armies, for example, when they've got those big, deep, cheap skeleton zombie units tagging on the corner with a character that can fight, can break steadfast very quickly.
Yep.
And those kind of things are scary to a vampire player. You worry, to a Skaven player, you worry about getting rolled where they're just going to go over the top of you. So
I was playing against an Empire player once, and in previous games he was running 50. I can't remember if they were swordsmen or halberdiers, but he was running 50 horde. And when he played me, he put them 5 wide, 10 deep.
Yep.
And breaks my steadfast because none of my units were that big.
No.
And it made a massive difference.
No, I agree. So there's a few little tips and tactics there. Have you got any, Wayne, that you want to mention before we sort of to give them a little taste? We don't want to give them too many tips because then they'll be doing it against us. But yeah,
tips. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
No, but you know how to lose. So
yeah. Listen to better players.
Yeah,
take their advice.
I like it. So yeah, on that, there's some tips to keep you going. But yeah, I think it's all about putting the Gracie under pressure. He is just one man, and if you can get him early, he's not as hard to kill as a Slan. With all the stuff that flees, you don't tend to have the fleeing problem. So, but
one thing I would say, right, no matter what army you're going to take, even if you're going for a really competitive build, rather than just copy it off the internet. Try and find your own way of it. Try and still keep some element of fun and something that's yours, something that you've come up with and you've put in there. Just sort of downloading something off the net and sort of that works, and just using that. It's kind of takes to me that's kind of like building your own list is a big part of Warhammer. If you're not kind of doing that, then it's a shame, really.
No, I agree. Good. I like it, Wayne. I don't know what to call that, but it's kind of,
the truth.
The truth. Wayne speaks. Okay, cool. Okay, on to the next segment and the last of the Skaven segments. We're going to talk to you briefly about how to turn this tournament filth out and turn it around in a fair amount of time.
Or hobby gaming fluff.
Hobby gaming fluff in a fair amount of time.
Just dip it.
So, just dip it, Wayne. I'm going to hand this one over to you. As somebody that isn't exactly Mr. Speedy Painter, it's not good for me, but we're talking about how do you get this new Skaven filth? You've written a list, you want to go and play it. How do you get it out on the board, tournament legal, club friendly, whatever you want to call it? Go.
Right, the quickest way to do this is for UK listeners. I'm sure there's something equivalent for US or whatever country you're in. Plasticoat sprays. They make a chocolate brown one. Now, firstly, you undercoat all your models in the chocolate brown, and then you get a lighter brown, say something like a Humbrol range, where they do. I think it's actually called dark brown, but it isn't. It's kind of like a mid brown, and then you do what's called dusting. Technical painters will call this xenophore highlighting. Right, but basically, I didn't even know what xenophore highlighting was until somebody explained to me. I said, "Oh, dusting, yeah, I've been doing it for years," and they got offended when I called it dusting. Right, basically, what you do is you take the can, give it a good shake as you normally would, and then you spray from a further distance away and then that way, and rather than just colouring the model, you have a kind of dust. That's why I call it dusting. A dusting effect that will lay on top of the model, creating a highlight. Hence, xenophore highlighting. What this will do in turn is it will create light and shaded areas. Yeah. So then, once you've done that, use colours to make it easy. Use colours that are complement brown. So you stick to other browns, reds, yellows. If you stick to that small palette of colours, what you'll find is when you use a wash or or dip itself, army painted dip, if you use that, you'll find that it will complement the colours much, much better. If you go for something like, greens will work because obviously with Skaven, you get that dirty colour with staining and that will work. But if you're doing Plague Monks and you've got a larger green area, you'll find it'll look really patchy and it doesn't look that great. So, the best way to larger like cloth areas is to stick with kind of like mid browns, and then maybe do the cowl, the hood, if you like. Do that in a red, or you could get away with green because it's kind of a smaller area, so you get that little bit of colour put in there. Obviously, flesh tones are fine because it's brown as well; they lend themselves to brown. And literally, you can leave gaps in the model. You can leave because you've got the chocolate brown and then the lighter brown sprayed on top. When you paint the areas on, you can leave the kind of the gaps. You don't have to paint right up to the lines. Because then what you'll find is when you put the dip on afterwards, that will line the recesses and obviously blend outwards. And what you'll find is because where you've used colours that lend themselves to brown, everything's got that kind of same hue to it. And individually, you'll look at the model and think, it's okay. But when you look at it en masse, especially when you've actually dry brushed a nice base and put some good sort of clump foliage on there and give it a tidy movement tray, suddenly it all comes together. You know, a couple of little signs on the banner, just, you know, a couple of little scaven glyphs on the banner and a couple of little, you know, touches with, say, I know some rocks on the movement trails, you know, something like easy stuff, but it just adds a little bit of detail. Suddenly the whole unit will come together. Do that over a whole army. Bob's your dad's brother.
Yeah, and I suppose as a Skaven army, the dirty look works, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's they are, you know, they at the end of the day they're rats, you know, and there's the whole plague thing and the filth and everything. I mean, saying that, my armies are always bright, but then I'm not painting them really, really quick. But if I was to do, I mean, I said to you before we started recording that if I wanted to, I could do a fully, you know, full on tournament Skaven army. I could knock that in a month easy.
I think as well, my own experience recently of painting, and I'm going to swear, Wayne, as far as probably you're concerned, some of the Foundry colours, I mean, you and me both paint a lot with Foundry. I do a Foundry GW mix, and I think you do to a degree, don't you, on some of it? But
yeah.
I found some of the Foundry colours to be a bit naff in terms of coverage, really bad coverage. Some of the greens, for example, don't cover if you're painting over black. Which is why I try and do everything with brown undercoat if I can, because I think it looks better anyway. But for save my Empire, I've been undercoating a lot of it black. The coverage on some of it's rubbish, really, really bad.
Do you thin it down?
I've tried not to, and I don't think it makes a massive difference. It reminds me of GW paint many years ago, which actually is probably what it is, because I think the Foundry suppliers are the same. But overall, I really like the colours. But I would say to you, if you're going to do a quick army, I'd be making sure you're using foundation paint, because you forget how good that Games Workshop paint is in terms of coverage, even watered down. It's almost a pleasure after painting with Foundry, trying to go over black. I mean, I used a green on a lizard man that I painted in a week just to see if I could match my old colours in Foundry colours. And oh my god, the green! It just, and the orange was the worst one.
Well, I used some of the Games Workshop browns beginning of the week. Actually, I was trying out some different base colours in it, and I mean, my biggest thing about the workshop colours is the amount of paint you get and how quickly it dries out. The actual colours themselves, I like all paint ranges because, you know, the more colours there are, different shades there are, the better. I think they're great. I love the Foundry system because obviously it's the 3-colour system. I just love that.
I also like the tone of them. That's the main thing for me. Is they're more of a mid-tone. Well, no, there's some bright ones because you use them, but my palette is massively different.
There's a lot of natural tones in it.
Yeah. But on coverage terms, if you go away from that and you pick up oranges and things, they're nowhere near as good as the Games Workshop one, in my opinion. But I
mean, saying it, using some of the new workshop paints, they are good paints, and like the consistency of the paint, especially if you're painting on black and you're doing en masse, they're great for that. Because when I've been doing like the speed painting commissions and stuff like that, I've used quite a bit of workshop on that stuff, and it does cover very, very well. You can't knock it for that. I think my biggest gripe is just the value for money.
Yes,
and the pots. I don't like the pots.
No,
I really don't like the pots.
I remember you saying.
And especially if you're doing a lot of painting, it's amazing how after a while that becomes quite annoying. Whereas, mind you saying that, the Foundry pots aren't perfect because after a while the hinge at the back snaps, so you have to take the whole lid off. So you kind of have to be careful about which ones are broken, which one, because I've had it before where I've taken one off thinking it was hinged and it wasn't. It's just flown off in my hand. So nothing's perfect.
No. But yeah, so that would be my tip. Going back to the thing is
and looking at the new workshop range, they've got some cracking browns, like really rich browns in there. So if you're doing speed paint for a Skaven army, great, some really good, and they've always made good reds. Workshop have always made good reds.
That's the one. I mean, my Empire and my Skaven have got quite a lot of red on. That Foundry red is just brilliant, and
metallics. I always found that for all my kind of, still negativity I've said about workshop paints, they've always, in my eyes, made the best metallics.
No, I agree. I mean, I still use all the silver, my entire silver's Games Workshop. I used golds from Foundry because I didn't find a lot in it. I mean, the Games Workshop colours I always had to mix with Scorched Brown to get coverage. So I didn't get on very
well with the Foundry metallics. I always found them too thin. I don't mind it being thicker and watering it down with the metallics because, I
No, the gold. I mean, the gold
didn't get on
base
that great
takes
with them.
the gold base takes 3 coats easily.
Yeah.
To get, and that's brazen A, I think it is, which is probably the most solid one. The others you just wouldn't cover. But I only use that because I didn't see a lot of difference in it. But the silver, I use Games Workshop silver. So
Yeah.
it's brilliant, brilliant. Bolt gun metal has been such a good color for so many years. Why would you do it? So yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we come across on this show a bit gold foundries, and we don't like Games Workshop, but I like both. To be honest, it's
I mean, I've got a mix. I mean, majority of my paints are Foundry, and I love them, and I've been using them for years. Do you know? Talking of paints,
this is the segment for it.
Right, my first Foundry paint dried up this
No
weekend.
way.
Yep.
No way.
I worked out it's 14 years old.
14
years old, and it finally dried up, and I threw my first ever Foundry paint away.
Good going.
That's impressive.
It is. That is pretty good going. Well done, Foundry. Well done. That was just my little thing. I would, if you were painting, if you're looking for pure speed, I'd be using the Games Workshop Foundry paints, because that's the one thing that, as we talk about
You mean the foundation paints?
Sorry, foundation
Do
paint.
they make them anymore?
What, foundation? Yeah, they're called base now or something, aren't they? But yeah, they're still the same.
Yeah, they're named different.
Yeah. But yeah, they're brilliant. And we'll talk about it in my Beardy Weedy Week. But I've been painting several things at the moment, and the one thing that I kind of regret is not picking foundation colours. But then at the time I decided on the palette, the new range didn't exist, and there is, as you say, a lot more choice in the current range. But I've also invested quite a bit of money in Foundry, so it just means that one particular colour I'm doing takes 2 to 3 coats, and that's a lot when you're painting 40 models. Whereas Foundry, the foundation one, will do it in 1. I would probably still do 2 because I'm like that, but not 3. This is still another pass.
I think as well, I find it with Foundry, the easy where you pick a colour and you get 3 shades. Whereas with Workshop,
you have to use your brain.
Yeah, it's kind of like you've got, I don't know how many paints they got. Let's just say, for example, they got 150 paints, and they've all got a different name, and you're like, oh man, I've got to learn all of these new colours.
That funny enough, I won't ruin it. I'll leave it for my Beardy Weedy Week. No, let's do it here. So this particular example, I painted, to see if I could match my Lizardmen, as I say, I painted it. I painted this one with the Foundry colours. It didn't match because Games Workshop, the palettes I used, again, I just picked random colours and stumbled across it one day. I used Catajan green, which I'm not sure it even exists. And then I had Camo green, which is quite yellowy green. And then I used Scorpion green, which is really fluorescent, but ultimately sort of yellow tinted green. The Foundry equivalents, they don't do too many. You use one, I think it's Phlegm Green. It's probably the nearest to it. But actually, I found what you needed to do with the Foundry is the same. You needed to mix pots to get the same effect. Like Catajan Green is a bit like Moss Shade, which we use. And some of the other greens are a bit like probably Phlegm Green, as I say. So you needed to do it. But when I went back to then, I thought, I'll just pull out my old Games Workshop paints. And I was like, I've got to mix. No. I got this colour drab from Foundry, and it looked the same as my Khemri and my 50-50 Khemri and bleach bone mix that I used on a lot of my bases, but it's not. It's very slightly different and aggravates me. So I'm sure if I put it in the army, it wouldn't really notice because you just mix it in with the existing stuff, but I would notice. So I went back to mix it, and I instantly just put all my Lizardmen back in a box. I can't do it. I can't sit here and mix because everything was mixed. The skin was mixed. The everything but the scales was mixed. And I was like, and even some of the scales were mixed. And I was just like, no. Foundry, you pop open your pot, you paint it on. And especially with the way I'm painting these days, which is very much base, wash, to highlight. That's it. The Foundry system is brilliant for it. But I would still, if I could go back on the armies I'm working at the moment, choose to redo it, I would make sure I picked colours which had foundation, Games Workshop foundation equivalents, because you'd be able to do it a lot quicker.
If the base colour for the Foundry, the shade colour, was the consistency of Workshop base colours, then it'd be perfect.
Yeah, it'd be just brilliant. Because for me, that's what's missing, and really, that's what Games Workshop have gone with, haven't they? That's how they've made the system. It's just for me, they don't match the colours easy enough. Highlight,
it's almost like you need to find a Workshop base colour that's a slightly darker ever so slightly darker shade than the shade colour of Foundry.
Which is what I do with the reds. I use foundation red and then bright red because I like it's a more neutral red than the Games Workshop, like blood red, say. So that's exactly how I paint that. But yeah, if you could do that over, and a bit like that chocolate brown plastic coat that you and me use on Skaven, a lot of people use on Skaven. Spear Shaft Shade is a brilliant highlight for it. But it's just randomly, that just works. And I think that's the key, is probably mucking around with it. If you were really going for ultimate speed, spending the time to really get your palette sorted, and then just going, because if I'd done I mean, you're sitting next to a tray of 20 slaves. The brown I like on that, which is buff leather, takes 3 passes to do, or it takes a watered down foundation towel set ochre, and then probably 1.5 or 1 if I do it really well thick to cover the areas. But if I painted it neat, even on brown, it would be 3 coats. If I painted it on black, it would be 4 coats. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, but it's not. I suppose it's not designed because the shade itself would cover easier. But I don't want the shade. I want the middle. So it's weird. It's a lot of things like that. But yeah, going back to the speed painting, that's what I'd do. I'd make sure it's foundation. So there we go. Anything else on the speed painting, Wayne? Are you done? Was it just pretty bases and nice and neat?
Yeah, yeah. It is pretty, but a lot of it is when it's basic painting. Jazz it up with the bases, because most people are only looking for that eye for about 3 foot. And what they'll see, certain things will catch their eye, like really nice clump foliage on the bases and stuff like that. And as long as the painting's neat, and it's kind of like you haven't got it slapped over areas it shouldn't be on. I'd say that's the biggest thing about speed painting. Just make sure even if you're not painting right up to the lines, just make sure it's consistent and it's neat. And then obviously then the dip will really work for you. It'll make everything come together.
Good. Okay. Well, that probably concludes our little Skaven type topics. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about some plastic strip that you've been using, Wayne.
Oi, geese. Oi, oi.
Hello, sweetheart. Show us your tips.
Okay, Wayne. So we're here to talk to you about stripping. Plastic in this sense. So tell us a bit about what you've been up to with this stuff and what it is.
I've been playing around with this stuff for quite a while. It's called, the company that makes it is called Plastruct. I'm sure there's other companies. It's small packs of plastic strips, which range from, I'm not sure what the biggest they make. Imagine kind of someone would say, if you wanted like squared, so it would be like 4mm by 4mm. And then it goes right down to stuff that's almost like very fine wire, but it's plastic. So you can do a whole host of things with it. I've made goblin chariots. I don't know if anyone's seen them on Twitter or posted them. I've had a snotling pup wagon. I made a rock lobber, a doom diver. You can do, especially for like construct stuff, you can pretty much do whatever you want, because the very small strips, once you've kind of with the timbers, what I do is I take, for example, if I took something that was 3mm square, I'd take a sharp modelling knife and then I would etch out the corners to make it look like it's kind of been fashioned with an axe. Yeah. And then kind of rough up the areas and put little notches and stuff like that. I mean, that takes a while, but it's well worth doing, because then it does look like some completely sharp square item. And then obviously work out how you're going to build something. So if you're having planks, because a lot of the stuff that, me making like a chariot base, obviously you want the planks that they stand on. And then you'd make those out of thin. So I'm trying to think of measurements now. Say you had something that was about 5mm wide, but was 0.5mm thick. And then you'd etch it all out to make it look like rough planks. And then you'd cut the planks up to the size you wanted to. And then glue it together by making either a timber strut or what will be a metal strut. So you'd make another thinner piece of plastic that's slightly narrower. You'd glue the planks by putting them the opposite direction, so it almost looks like a pallet. And then to make it look like they've got rivets, you take the very, very thin, small plastic and you cut little tiny squares out of those, and then you just glue them. Use plastic glue, the ones where you've got the precision nozzle.
Like a needle nozzle.
Like a needle nozzle, yeah. And then you can put little dots of glue on, and then you just put and I usually use a knife. I literally just push the knife on top of the little bolts, and that'll pick them up, and that gives you something to then just put them in place. And then when it's all together, it just looks like there's crude nails or screws bolted through the plastic. And when you paint it, obviously you paint the wood as wood and the metal as metal, and suddenly, boom, it just looks really, really good. And it's just time, really. I mean, the packs, they range from about £2.50 a pack to anything up to sort of £4.50, £5 a pack, but you can do a lot with it. I've got packs that I've had for a couple of years now. I never got around to using all of it, but they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant bit of kit. Like I say, I've made 3 goblin chariots. I've already got the wolves, so all I need now is the crew. And I want to do them with really old metal goblins, not not the old night goblins, the actual sort of normal goblins, but I want to get some old metal ones to put in there just to make them look a bit more characterful. Because the plastic ones, I think they're a bit too big for it.
Yeah.
You know, the kits. So I want to do that. The rock clobber, I've started painting out. Really, really pleased with the way that's come out. The Doom Diver, which I'm almost finished. You've seen that, haven't you?
Yeah.
And the wood on it, I'm painting differently. I've started to do. I'm doing that moss colour, that foundry moss colour, and graining it.
Yeah.
Because obviously I haven't grained the plastic. You can do. I have done it before. You can actually scratch into the plastic and do all the graining if you want to.
But you've kind of chipped all the edges out, haven't you? So at a slight angle, so it looks like timbers.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're completely machine edged. They look like
it
timber.
kind of looks like they've fashioned it with an axe, which the Orcs and Goblins would have done. So it's got the shape and everything like that, but everything's kind of rough. And then I've painted the grain onto the sort of the surfaces to make it, and obviously with the cutting and the grain painted on, it actually looks like big chunks of timber. I've even on the ends of the timber, I've cutted circular patterns to make it look like the rings on the tree as
Did
it's been cut.
Use the word cutted?
Did I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I've cutted timber planks. Yeah, I like it. But
should be a word.
Yeah, why not?
It isn't.
Yeah, we're on the internet. We can say what we like. Is this a new word? I cutted it. So
it sounds like my 6-year-old.
Yeah, and mine. I was
got it from him.
Yeah. But yeah, for anyone who hasn't seen it, there'll be I'll post up pictures on the episode thread on our forum, so make sure you check that out. But yeah, I mean, you've had a lot of practice for this, and you can tell it looks awesome. And you scratch built doom wheels with it, haven't you? And
yeah, originally I did the doom wheel. I mean, that started off with a bit of downpipe, 4-inch downpipe, and then I lined it with matchsticks to make the initial wheel. But everything else is made out of plastic. I'd say, like with most things, have a go. Just get some of this stuff and have a play around with it, and you'll find that it's not that difficult. And it goes as far as your imagination, and also a bit of clever. It's an easy way of creating something really unique to your army. And like I said, it is easier than you think it is. It's just time. You just got, if you're going to make the planks and you're going to etch it all out, you've got to just accept that, doing that nicely is going to take you a few hours. But once it's done, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Because I even made the wheels for the chariots. And I've got I've got the same game with the planks, and then I've got the crossbars on it, and I've put little bolts on those. But then I wanted like a metal banding around the wheel. And some of the plastic you can get, because it's so thin, I was sort of like pre-rolling it around one of the handles of my knife, like an X-Acto knife, because it's round, to kind of bend it to shape.
Yeah.
And then I super glued it because I had because I wanted like an instant bond, so I could get it really tight. I super glued it on and then used activator. So that's even got the strapping, the join on it. Obviously, you don't want to see that, so you make sure that that's on the bottom, connected to the base, and then that way when you look around the wheel, the whole thing looks like one piece of metal banding. And I'm really pleased with the way they've come out. I think when they're painted, it's going to
it is
going to be really good.
And as we discussed, you save yourself a fortune on the £25 chariots.
The Goblin Chariot's £24 in fine cast, and it's a really nice model. It's an old model, but I still really like it. But when you actually look at that model, there's hardly anything to it. It's a tiny little chariot. So £24. So there's 3 of them. So it's best one is £72. And and these have probably worked out for the bits that I used to make it probably about a tenner.
Yeah, bargain.
And the fact that the time that I've put into it means I've got my own chariots.
Also quite like the idea of using it not just for constructing actual units, but just things like scenic bases, terrain, jetties. I'm thinking of like pirate themes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
A Sea Guard army, Corsair army, that kind of theme.
Yep.
You could do it across the bases quite easily, couldn't you? It'll be time consuming, don't get me wrong, but it'll look cool.
Well, the etching, what you do for the big timbers, if you do exactly the same with some of the bigger plastics, but paint it as stone, it just looks like rough stone. Basically, what you do is you just etch it out a little bit more, so there's no flat surfaces on it at all. But the principle is exactly the same. But if you paint one that looks like wood and you paint one that looks like stone, even though the process is the same, they both look different. So it's kind of, it fools the eye.
Yeah.
Like the when I did the rock clobber, the main stone, obviously the counterweight, that's just a few of because I couldn't quite get a piece of plastic big enough. So I glued some of them together, let that dry overnight, and then I just etched, just carved it and chipped away at it until I made the shape of the stone for the counterbalance. And then obviously added that to the model. But the process of how it's done is no different.
No.
It's just have a go. Try it out, guys, because it's very rewarding. I found building this stuff really, really enjoyable.
And where can you get it from? Local hobby shops? I mean, we buy ours in up the road, don't we? In a little town.
Waterlooville. We've got a local model shop that they've got like a rack with like a turnable rack with all these different plastics on.
I imagine most hobby shops will have it, won't they?
I think they're pretty much aimed at model railway. I think that's the kind of what they're made for. They're made for like model railway, to make all like beams and stuff like that. Because they do some of the packs, you can actually get like lengths of ladders and steel works with like the kind of A-frames and stuff like that. So I think it is geared at model railways. So if you've got a model railway shop, supplier, that kind of thing, and also online, Plastruct, they've got their own website. It's American, I think, now.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's other companies that do it.
Definitely. Good. Well, check that out. It certainly looks cool. And as I say, pick if you haven't seen the pictures on Twitter, A, get yourself on Twitter, and B, come and see on our forum. They'll be there.
Are we sitting comfortably? Then we should begin. The story of the week.
Okay, Wayne, so the story of the week kind of ties in with what the next and final segment is to do with our weeks, really. Is that you and I played a game, did we not?
Yes, we did.
And we played a hobby game. Now, so I wanted to play...
I like the way you put that in. We played a hobby game. You didn't say we played a competitive game.
No. No, I believe your text was no ETC lists.
Yawn.
I wanted to use Empire because I'm playing it at the moment and I like to play the army I'm playing, so I thought great. And luckily Jack Armstrong, who is lending me his army, he has everything. You can just pick whatever you want pretty much from the book, apart from great swords. He's probably got those at home as well, but I've only got a selection in the army. So I thought what's going to be good, I texted you to see what you were taking. I think you said, did you say rats at the time or something?
I was going to take the Throt because I'm taking that to Blood and Glory.
Yeah.
So it should be fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to get smashed every game with that, but I'm just going to do it.
No, it'll be good because there's a lot of points for painting, so just don't lose too badly. You'll be all right. Being a nice guy and painting, you do fine. I used the Empire, and I thought, now I wanted it to be mainly blocks, but I wasn't going to go and not take any demigryphs because ultimately, as I said, I sort of mentioned earlier in the show, I find that the Empire army, and I've said this before, is men of different types. So if you've got men with sticks, you've got men with shields, they all do the same thing in the game in my eyes, which is their infantry. So whilst I had 2 units of 20, I thought I tried 20 spear blocks. I thought, well, they might be quite useful, 20 man. I don't know how good 20-man units are anymore, so I thought I'd give them a go. So I used 2 20-man units. I used a 40-man halberdier block with Ludwig von Heelanhammer, as he's known. It was just a general of the Empire who had a 1-up save, the armour and meteoric iron, and I took the Mace of Hailstrom because I thought it'd be quite fun. And I thought ultimately, if I'm going to take something fluff as well, I'll probably need something. If you do turn up with an A-bomb or something, I need something that can kill it because otherwise you're just going to go through the army. And I thought it'd be a funny story if he survives if you don't kill him instantly with the strength 6d3 wound attack, then it'd be quite a funny story if he brings you down with a mace. +1 leadership banner BSB. And no, I don't even know if he had that actually. No, I don't think he had the +1 leadership banner. It might have been, I think he might have had some armor. Can't remember. Anyway, battle standard. And then I had a warrior priest in the unit with nothing else either. He was just there to provide hatred to that. And those three men were in the unit. Then I had, the 220 swords, a couple of archer detachments for throwaways, 4 demigryphs with a musician, a cannon, a Pegasus hero. I'm just trying to think what else. 30 flagellants, didn't I?
Yeah.
And that
was block.
Yeah, that was almost a list. And a little 15-man bunker with 2 level 2s in, 1 on shadow, 1 on light.
Which hid in a building.
For the whole game because there's a wyvern flying around. So, and you had.
I had
not Skaven.
I took Orcs and Goblins because I decided I'd just run them out. I had a Black Orc warlord on a war boss on a wyvern, but he just had a shield. There was no magic items on him. I just took him as just out of the book. I had a Black Orc BSB, and I had a level 3 Night Goblin Shaman. That was my characters. I had a Dispel Scroll, and did I take the +1 leadership banner? I think I did. And then I had 40 Night Goblins with just hand weapon shields and had nets and 1 fanatic. Then I had 40 Night Goblin Bowmen they didn't have the poison banner or anything. They were just as it were. And then I had 30 Orc boys. Not upgraded to big uns, just normal boys.
Just Orc boys.
Yep. And then I had 15 squigs with 10 handlers in 1 unit. 10 squig hoppers. 3 goblin chariots in a unit, 8 trolls.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about them.
Yeah, the 8 trolls. I think that's it.
No, I think it was about right. It was. I remember looking at.
Sorry, no, rock lobber and a doom diver.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So you had and did you
2
say
bolt throwers?
Did you say the unit of 3 chariots?
Yeah.
So you had quite a balanced list, but I looked at it and I thought this is horrible. It's all bigger. All your units were pretty much bigger than me. They hit a lot harder. I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with the trolls. Really, I looked at it and thought the flagellants, the only unit I've really got to do anything. And because of the way the scenery went, it was a fairly tactical game, wasn't it? It cut off a lot of the board, and I couldn't really get my width fully on you. And there was just loads of stupid moments, wasn't there? Where the demi, your Wyvern Lord failed to charge the demis. The demis went in, failed their leadership test, but managed to do 2 wounds to you. The fear test, managed to do 2 wounds to you, and then you battered me back. Won the and I didn't break or something, and then the next round you had your great weapon, and I failed to kill you, didn't I? Because I failed another fear test.
Yeah, I had 1 wound left, didn't I? And you didn't do it. Oh, because you failed your leadership test again.
Yeah, and then you hit me and killed me and ran me down, and they were dead. And then that was marauding around the flanks. But then I cannoned him off, didn't I? And the monster decided to look after the body of the thing. But how did you? You rock lobbered the cannon, didn't you? Yeah, we had this discussion about what to shoot, and you rock lob with a cannon, so I never got to finish it off. So the Wyvern was just sitting there guarding the body of the dead warlord. But the flagellants went in and took the troll. No, my unit of halberdiers went in and took the trolls.
I put the 3 chariots into it first, didn't I? Tried to soften it up a bit.
Took the back rank off the flagellants, which I think was a good move. And they kind of got delayed a bit because they're only leadership 7, which is a bit sad face. And the my halberdier horde, your rock lobs are amazing, weren't they? 2 direct hits took off like half my halberdier horde before I got there, but they went into the trolls, and with the Mace of Hellstrom did 3 wounds, did me proud. With the Heelanhammer itself, hit it, and I did enough to beat you in combat, didn't I? Ran you down, went straight into the flank of your orc boys, and I was like, yeah, baby, I'm gonna roll you up. And then you passed your steadfast test because you'd obviously done so many attacks, so much damage to that halberdier unit. I only had a single rank on it, basically, of all the characters. And I put you on a steadfast test, which you passed. And then you reformed. You put goblins in the rear. That went on for ages. Then my Hurricanum, my Hurricanum flew in the side of the goblin unit to sort of hold it. But all this time your orcs are grinding.
Then I put a giant in the side of the Hurricanum.
You put a giant in the side of the Hurricanum, which we worked out.
I did mention that, I had a giant as
you
well.
Had a giant, loads of random stuff. Then I put... what did I put? I put 30 flagellants into the side of the giant. So if you haven't seen this,
it was a mess.
The pictures are on Twitter as it goes. It just got messier and messier. And it came down to, in the end, like the giant died, I overran into the orcs. And it came down to, there was Ludwig von Heelanhammer himself and his mate, the battle standard bearer, surrounded by like the remainder of the orc unit and the Black Orc BSB, with goblins in the rear. I'd lost my Hurricanum, you lost your giant, and then the flagellants went in. And then in the last turn, you put in the back of that massive combat, you put, was it Squigs in the rear, Archer block in the side, didn't you? And it was something like an 18 res combat versus a 17 res combat. I lost by 1 and held, and that's how the game ended, but it was enough to win by like 500 points, wasn't it? But massive basically bundle in the middle of who was going to break. I think the shakiest it came down to was you had your 8 steadfast test, but then I had a leadership 5 with a reroll, didn't I, which I passed to keep me in there and keep it going. So that was
that's when my shoulders just slumped, didn't they? Because I thought that was my chance and it didn't happen.
Because when I went in the side, I was like, oh yeah, this is all over, baby, and it just wasn't. The goblins came from nowhere. I didn't actually think originally when I put it in the side I even saw the goblins were there. It was just like they appeared because they were behind one of those Witch Fate tours, and I don't really think I was.
You remember at the beginning of the game they were moving around to support the Wyvern guy, and then obviously you moved the flagellants around the sort of the other side, so I had to spin them back round again. So they had kind of like 2 or 3 turns, but they were just going one
forward.
way to the other. But they came good in the end.
Yeah, they were good, and the nets were great as well. You only netted yourself once, but they were awesome, weren't they, for actual grinding? You forget because you don't play them a lot in actual proper Warhammer. Most of the Orc and Goblin armies are full of war machines and chariots and stuff, and there's just like nets, behave, strength 3, I've got halberd, man.
They are
it was horrible.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
But
my
really
first
cool
experience of using a Doom Diver as well.
You were like, it does what? Because you weren't quite sure, were you, I think?
Well, I never play against him, and the first time I'd use one, I just brilliant.
So I forgot what you said. You were like, oh yeah, well, it only gets like a man. I was like, no. If the template hits, it's D6 strength 5. You're like, oh right. I was like, yeah, no armor save. And you're like, what? I was like, yeah, why don't you shoot the peg captain? You're like, oh yeah. And then just started annihilating things, didn't it? It was like, yeah, just a few of them.
How did he die? Because he got the squig hoppers,
Oh,
didn't he?
yeah.
He went to squig hoppers, killed those, then overran.
Yeah, the peg captain went flying in. He had a re-rollable 1-up and just a sort of striking, I think it was. Went in, killed the peg riders. And then you got a reasonably long charge with your wizards. Big 30-man goblin archer unit into him, beat him by 1 and ran him down and killed him. I was like, rubbish. So he died epically, and he did pretty well as well, didn't I think he hit and wounded everything and lost on the muso. That was a bit of a shame. So yeah, loads of stories in that game, but yeah, the combat in the middle was just what you'd kind of want from a fluff game, wasn't it? Just epic, stuff charging in. And I like to think at the end of it, probably the last few flagellants, because you did butcher the flagellants, but they just wrecked things, didn't they, in that charge with all the re-rolls and everything. I would like to think that how that ended fluff-wise was that as the flagellants were just dying and distracting everyone, old Ludwig and his mate just went, come on, Chief, let's get out of here, and just, bailed out the back of the board to fight another day, and then had to explain somehow how they managed to sacrifice an entire army of state troops to get themselves out of the middle of the board, when they should have been at the back with the cannons. Normally in the bunker somewhere. So those
squigs came good at the end, didn't they?
Yeah, they were good. They battered some swordsmen, didn't they, which were double ones, otherwise it would have been even sooner. They would have been in. The swordsmen were rubbish, actually, units of 20.
They were.
I think it's because you had big units. They just didn't do anything. One had to stand in front of the trolls, and I tried to mind raise them. That was my first dice. That was my first spell in the hobby game, wasn't it? 6 dice mind raiser.
The start of the game, though, was it? You roll for your spells, and you went, I don't think I need mind raiser. I don't really need to take that. It's not that kind of game. But then you took it, and then the first spell you did it was like
6 dice mind raiser. And you're like, yeah, scroll, because I wanted the dudes to cause a bit of damage to you before it died. But the magic did nothing in that game. Oh no, I lie. It did a lot, didn't it? Because speed of light is what kept my stuff alive. You had to stop one or the other, and you're like, well, stop mind raiser or stop whatever else was going on, and speed of light went off. So, but yeah, interesting, because neither of us had big magic, did we? You had itchy nuisance, which was exactly that, a complete nuisance. You got, I think it's Gork will fix it at one point. It was quite interesting because neither of us had any real offensive magic, and then we got in combat. It was like bam, bam, buff, 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 in this massive combat in the middle. So really good game. I enjoyed that. And again, just goes to show you how a 2-player game is when you both don't take stupid stuff. Because the normal ETC list would have been in the corner somewhere.
And the game went right to the last turn, but it could have gone. It really could have gone either way, right up to the very end, and that's what you want out of a game.
Definitely,
because there's nothing worse than actually seeing out last 2 turns of a game when you know you're not in it.
Yeah, you might as well just pack up at that point. So no, it was really good. And also, because you're not really interested in who's winning, who's losing, like you would be in a tournament game, it's more fun to see how, like I say, Ludwig von Heelanhammer, could he survive and get out of there on his own? And I like to think that he did bail out at the end. So there you go. Yeah, really good game. And we didn't play a scenario, actually. I forgot. I was going to see if you wanted to roll something up, but we ended up playing, but it turned out fine in the end anyway. So
I think the scenery lent itself quite well to the game, because it was they were in awkward positions, weren't they? Like the Witch Fate tour, and there was a piece of impassable. Yeah, and they were kind of. And they kind of funneled it right into the middle, didn't it? Which made the game really, because it really. Now in a tournament game, you wouldn't want that kind of scenery, but because of the armies we had, it worked really, really well.
Yeah. I don't think you would, because for defensive players it'd be ideal, because you could sit in a little funnel that have to funnel the other person in. But in this case, we both had aggressive armies, so it worked quite well, because it basically stopped either of us from really ganging up width wise. So we had to it come down to more of an exchange of units. So rather than both either sitting off, if it was plain, we could have both ended up sitting off, not doing a lot. But because of where it was, you sort of blink first and put your trolls in the gap, and I was like, I've got nothing to deal with these. Here, have a unit and just see what happens. So it ended up being a really really fun game. So there you go, story of the week.
Beady weedy week.
Okay, Wayne, so to finish off, we've got about 3.5-4 minutes to do this in, is our Biddy Widdy Weeks. Now, for me, I'm going to start, because we've just been talking about it off air, but sitting next to Wayne is kind of my progress. I've almost got like attention deficit disorder. It's a bit like I've turned into you. I can't concentrate on one thing. I'm not sure what's best. I've got Blood and Glory that you and me are both attending. You've kindly offered me a backup plan with an army I could take if I wanted, which is good. But it's old school, so it's massive painting points. So my initial thought was I want to take the lizards, but as we've already discussed in the show, the thought of painting those lizards is horrid. But But really, that's what I should do, because I could just make some, small improvements to them. I can paint some scenery, do all the nice things in a nice way. Yeah, but I just don't want to. Basically, I want to paint either my Skaven or my Empire. So, and every day it's different. At the minute, I've got Skaven on the tray. I was painting this morning, but tomorrow I'll probably have the Empire out. So it's been a bit. I just need to concentrate on one, but I have quite enjoyed flicking between the two.
Yeah.
And given no time limits, I think that's what I'd do. I'd just paint what I fancy depending on the day. I'd do a bit of this, bit of that, and by the end of it, I would have 2 painted armies. But
you probably find you get to a certain point that you actually be more productive, because you're just, regardless of what you're painting, you're getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Like, where if you was only painting one army and you was having a bit of a hobby wobble, you'd probably have days where you didn't do anything. So the fact that you're actually painting every day is good.
Yeah, I think that's, and sticking to the hour is quite good for me as well.
Yeah.
Although I was quite into it the other night, I thought I could paint longer. I think an hour for me is quite good. Just a quick hour in the morning, is normally enough on, say, 15 to 20 models, just to do like a layer of one colour or something, and then you just think I'll get the next morning and do it. You don't have to concentrate; it's mindless. And I try and keep the actual like building. If I'm going to convert or build or anything like that, I keep that for the weekend and try and find an hour or so to do that then, and then in the mornings when I wake up, it's just these small amounts. So that's really what I've been doing. Is that obviously this Blood and Glory tournament, I'm not going to go over it because it's been so played on bad dice that if you listen to any of the shows in the last 2 weeks, you probably couldn't have missed it. But we're both attending because it's kind of old school. There's some things I like about it, some things I don't like about it, straight off the bat, but I want to go and play because I think it's going to be a nice change. So yeah,
I don't actually know anything about it, apart from I know I'm going, and it's kind of,
you'll love it.
It's
it's right up your street.
Well, I know a little bit about it, but not I haven't actually read the rules pack as such.
I'm not sure it's out yet. Actually, It's just been little points been pointed out on the Bad Dice podcast. But yeah, it's high painting scores, high sportsmanship scores. There's a quiz that gives you points. It is pretty old school in that terms.
Yeah.
As a result, there's some people obviously who've had some concerns over it. I'm just really intrigued to see how it goes. So, good luck to Ben. I think he's actually sold out already, which is excellent for a first event at sort of 80 odd tickets. So really pumped and looking forward to that.
He's not afraid to try something different. That's good.
No. I mean, everybody's got their preferences, haven't they? So, and he's done the right thing. He's gone out and said, "This is what we're doing. If you don't like it, don't come." And he sold 80 tickets in a couple of days. So it's not a problem at all. So yeah, that's good. But that is kind of influencing it. And I've also got a tournament booked in Cardiff. First time I've attended that one, actually, Tribute. It's called in October. Just managed to squeeze in on the 60 player list. And I quite like the idea that that's a bit more low key, different set of people. Well, not low key in a bad way, but it's just a different set of people. It's only 60 people. You get that more intimate feel that you used to get from the 40-man events you and me attended years ago. So, good. So that's really my week. And obviously editing podcasts. Wayne, anything? I mean, we've covered a lot of it, but you've got about a minute.
Busy with the plastics and that. Doom Diver. I spent a lot of time painting the Doom Diver, trying to get the graining effects and everything on it, and obviously using it in a kind of not traditional, a non-traditional wood color, because I want all the wood to kind of look not really kept, really, sort of unkept, I should say. But yeah, really enjoying the first model that I'm painting for the Orcs and Goblins, and next I'm going to do the Rock Globber, and then after that I'm going to do an Orc boss on a wolf, and on a boar.
Brilliant.
As a kind of like a Scarvet kind of guy. So really kind of pumped about doing the Orcs and Goblins at the moment, because I've actually kind of the colours I've tried out and that what I want to do, like for the Orc flesh and stuff like that, I've nailed it down to what I want to do. So now I'm kind of really infused about painting.
Brilliant.
So just need to start on the first, but I might do the big block of Orc boys. That might be my first big unit that I'll do, because I'm thinking, looking at the models, I'm not overly infused about the models themselves, but I think if I do want them in the army, so I think if I get on with that first and do all the base colours for that, and then it's get the kind of the laborious stuff out of the way.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a good idea. So we've both been really busy. I mean, you people should follow us on Twitter. I suppose this leads straight into the way out, really. But make sure you follow us on Twitter. Wayne tweets all these photos. The Saucy section, if you're already a member, is our special section of the forum. It's not just £9 a year. It's not going to be £9 a year for much longer, because it's half price currently, and that gives you access to a load of extra content. We're doing 2 shows extra a month in the Saucy section at the moment, on all sorts of range of topics. And there's photos, exclusive photos, and a lot of other behind the scenes stuff in there as well, tutorials, all the rest of it. So if you're not on there, get on there. You can see the kind of stuff Wayne's talking about, the kind of definitely stuff I'm doing, because it's very easy from an app I've got on my phone to update it. And yeah, just make sure that you're helping support the show in that way. And if you're not, make sure you check out Wayne on Twitter, because he's got pictures of all this stuff and it's brilliant. You can contact us, Dan at Heelanhammer.com, Wayne at Heelanhammer.com. We'll pick up your emails. You can contact us on the forum. Just sign up. It's free. Make sure you drop me an email, though, so I can activate you so you don't get caught up in with the spammers. If you do sign up to the Saucy, please make sure you include your forum username. I don't know how many times a day I have to type, "Thanks for the support of the show. Please, can you send me your username, because I can't activate you." Just make sure you do it. Hobby Hero. We set a challenge not too long ago about sending us your war stories, really, of the Khorne Blood Throne guy as your general. No one sent us one yet, which means you're disappointing Hobby Hero. Someone out there must have played with this bad boy, and we want to see pictures. I know it's still early days for the book, but there must be someone there. So make sure you're sending us those. We also want to hear your hobby tips for the segment. So any hobby tips you've got, they can be literally a one-liner. It doesn't really matter. I just want to read them out. They can, anything. It might be that you've discovered a new glue that's fantastic, or a certain way of doing blood, or basing material, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just send it in. We want to hear about it. If you like the show, make sure you drop us, and you are an iTunes user, make sure you go on iTunes and drop us a review. It helps us move up the charts and find new listeners. Most importantly, if you've got blogs, or you're on forums, or when you're talking to your friends, just make sure you make a real point in plugging us, really, because if you like our show, we want more people like you to listen to us. And finally, oddgames.co.uk for all your hobby needs, all your products. They've got great prices on Games Workshop stuff, which is obviously important. And not only that, but board games, Magic the Gathering, loads of other things that have got really, really excellent prices on. So check them out. Anything from you, Wayne, before we disappear?
Can I give my my oldest and dearest friend, who's best man at my wedding? I spoke to him during the week, and his boy has just got into Warhammer.
Oh yeah,
the painting side of it. So Luke Thomas, his name is. So because he's just started listening to the show and he's getting into it. So hello, and welcome to this hobby. We'll see you in 30 years when you're still doing it and moaning about it. So yeah. Good stuff. We always like new people coming into the hobby. And fun enough, one of my friends from World of Warcraft has just picked his paintbrush up after many years of a little dabble of 40k when he was 12, and he's now looking for life after Warcraft. So I'm sure we'll be around playing at some point. So thanks everybody for listening. As always, hope you've enjoyed it. Comments on the forum or via email, whichever. We just hope you enjoyed it, really. So until next time, we'll see you then. Bye bye.